Coach Calhoun, Eric Olson with the Associated Press. I was wondering, with regard to the playing rule situation with the 10-second substitution rule, Gus Malzahn down at Auburn says that he has spoken with you this week, asking you to push that back. I guess, what's your comment on that? Is there a chance that you could table this for a year?
You know that it's Eric, right? That's correct. Okay. Eric, the key is this. I think the only way it can or it should become a rule is if it is indeed a safety concern, and that can't be something that's a speculation or a possibility. I think there's got to be something empirical there where you realize, yep, this truly is a health matter in terms of not being able to get a defensive player off the field. And probably the concern just in general, just amongst the committee part of it, about 3 days prior before you met, you had the young man at Cal that had passed, during a workout. Just a little bit of recall. I know when I was in Denver with the Broncos, we played a game against the 49ers, and it was at a 2-minute situation at the end of the game, and Thomas Harrion, who was an offensive lineman for them, passed, who had been out there a good number of plays. And I think more than anything else, you just wanted to make certain that what are some facts that you can lean on, and if there's some certainty that there's a concern, then yeah, push it forward as a rule proposal. If it's not, and trying to take the next 10 days or so, and kind of what you gather from experts, and they say no, at this time it's only speculative, then the rule should not get pushed on. Should not be a rule, because now it's not a safety concern.
So there is no hard data that shows that there's a safety concern?
Well, that's kind of what you're waiting to see right now. You want to find out, is there certainly and I think it's got to be pretty resounding. Otherwise, it makes no sense to have, to push a rule forward.
So this is Brickman with the Gazette. So I understand your committee has not officially proposed this rule, but it's still kind of in a fact-finding mode?
No. Well, when we left the meeting, the motion was let's propose it, but what's crucial is what are we going to find out here over the next 10 days or so, the next between now and the end of the comment period, which can extend all the way till Monday, March 3rd. And it, I think again, you just want to make sure there's not I think anytime you lose somebody, even more so gets your attention. Not that you aren't already concerned, because I think you are. I think everybody is. And I think by and large you'd find coaches probably there's nobody that cares more deeply about the health of and the well-being of their athletes and coaches. I mean, you have a responsibility not only to them and their families, but it starts at a little bit of a young age, probably as soon as even when you recruit them. And as a person, if that's really, really not your makeup, then you're going to struggle big time as a leader in whatever capacity that may be, especially as a coach.
Have you been at all surprised by the amount of backlash that this proposal has received?
You want people to, make sure they can express a view. I think the key is, rather than trying to do something let's find something that's definitive in regards to safety. And just make sure it's not popularity driven or anything like that, but just something that's firm. And again, if it goes back that there's really, the people that you should, the people that probably have significant background in this, whether it's from the medical community or whoever that may be, and they say no, not at all. Continue, the way you operate. Just make sure have a plan. There's a pattern in place to be able to substitute, and it should be more than adequate. Then no rule. Or if there is a concern, then let's just make sure we're working on solid ground.
Was there anything else on the table in terms of finding a way to get substitutions in? Even adding timeouts or making just substitution timeouts where you get a 10-second window to do that, or anything like that other than this implementation?
Oh, I mean, there were all kinds of things that were brought up. You only do it on one down. you mentioned, do you add an additional timeout? And is it only is it a very short timeout just so you don't necessarily lengthen a game? You're trying to, there's probably no perfect science to it, at least in terms of, because one of the neat things I do think that's a part of college football are the various ways that people operate, defensively and certainly offensively too. We're a group that we want to have stretches where we move at a very rapid pace. There are other offenses that may, frequently snap the ball with less than 10 seconds on the 40-second clock, and that's what makes college football pretty darn special. Again, where it begins is just make sure that what we have going here is it's a phenomenal game. I mean, a great, great game, and, is there a legitimate safety concern? If there is, then let's address it. And if there's not, just trying to get a little more time here to make sure that if there is not, then there should be no rule.
Hey, Coach. Nick Palmer, Yahoo Sports. Is there any apprehension that there wouldn't be enough time, say, between now and March 6th to gather data in any way, in either direction, and just should there be another year or so to really come up with a comprehensive report and then discuss it further?
I think, Nick, if there's nothing that arises that's firm, then there's no way you want to enact a rule. That doesn't make any sense. But if there is something that surfaces where, there's legitimate concern here, then I think, now you're talking about some responsibility that's involved to do something about that if that's accurate.
Coach Eric with the AP, have you received any medical information that would back this rule passing, or are you expecting any specific medical information to come forward between now and March 3rd?
Eric, the one thing that we did have, but it was, I think, somewhat of a generalization is the NCAA does have some outline, at least in terms of some safeguards, some competitive safeguards, and yet it's just try to provide, and it's very generic, is just try to make sure there's ample chance for substitution to occur, and whenever there's some frequent and pretty intense activity, just make sure there's decent rest or recovery, and specifically if it's somebody that has asthma, being able to extract them and have an inhaler there if they need an inhaler. If they're fine, then good, go, turn around, go right back in.
How much did Coach Bielema and Coach Saban influence the proposal?
I don't know if there's a way really to define that part of it. I do know this, that the only thing that is going to matter is a medical or a safety part.
Was there a reason why someone who represents maybe the opposing viewpoint wasn't brought in?
Well, the thing I think anybody ought to be able to, in fact, I think, what you learn, especially after going through this, is I think you need to have more and more coaches involved, in terms of possibilities. And probably the other thing, too, is just having if it really is a safety matter, to have more medical people present, too.
Were there trainers or other medical personnel brought in during this period?
Yes, sir. There was a trainer there, yes.
Where was he from?
He was from Army, United States Military Academy. And he's not a voting member. He's just somebody that provides, some insight in.
What insight did he give?
Oh, I mean, his were. I think his insight was specifically to a couple of medical concerns that involved concussions. Briefed us a little bit on sickle cell trait. Whether or not to test all athletes is good, which I think most people feel it is, but there's also a concern that when that happens, can you get a little bit of false sense of security?
Has there been any anecdotal link between the the pace of play and concussions?
I think probably the only thing is the rapid play. There's been discussion. Does rapid play, if somebody gets dinged and you can tell that maybe they need to get out, or are they lining up and really, a teammate or somebody else doesn't really have a chance to see their true body language before going to a next play. But there's still a part of that too. Is that concrete? Is that something that's really firm, rather than just being able to say, "God, it kind of makes sense," or "It sort of makes sense"? Is it something that really is resounding?
Troy, this is Brett McMurphy with ESPN. Did you vote for this rule proposal, or are you in favor of this rule proposal?
Well, I'm in favor of trying to get to whatever the true facts are. And if the truth is that it is a concern, then I have a concern. If it's, as you go forward and there's just nothing there's real meat to be able to say at this time, there's empirical data to say that this is a problem, then no, I don't think there should be. At that point, then should not go forward in terms of as a rule proposal. But I think it's got to. You just want to find out a little bit more in terms of being definite. And I don't know if there's anything ever 100%, but at least, golly, get just something where we know for sure, and that is something you want to have.
How did it become a proposal? Did you or other members of the committee have to vote for this or approve this?
We do, yeah. It does have to be approved.
But wouldn't those individuals believe that it was a safety concern to get it to this point?
I think that's one of the things that did come up. Is this could be a safety concern, and then can we get even more to find out if that really is or it is not?
But I guess, I don't know if I'm making myself clear. I guess what I'm saying is you said you don't feel it should be a rule if there's no hard evidence whether there's any safety concerns yet. You guys have proposed that this become a rule in 2 weeks. So it's like you're saying you think it should be a rule, but then you're saying, well, if there is safety concerns, it definitely should be a rule. I guess why would it get to this point if you don't know the safety elements? Wouldn't you wait until you get the safety elements before you propose to make it a rule?
Well, is there a genuine concern that if a guy is on a field and he cannot be removed from the field, that can there be some serious consequences? And
is that what timeouts are for?
That's something I do think you'd find out as a counter argument. You could use a timeout or have somebody take a knee. And I'm not saying you blatantly take a knee for the substitution part of it, but if you are, maybe legitimately injured, then tell the ref, hey, I'm hurt, or I need to be examined.
Coach Calhoun, how would you respond to people that just say that this is basically powerful coaches wielding undue influence, I guess, on the process? The coaches that don't, that are having trouble with the hurry-up offenses or don't want to see them move as fast.
So you're saying from a tactical point, just strategically.
I guess what I'm saying is how would you respond to people in the public that are saying that this is basically Nick Saban trying to assert his influence to try to get the offenses to slow down a bit?
You're getting into the strategic part of it now, which I think is a completely different conversation. And maybe is it narrow? No, I just think it's got to be only if there's a absolute medical problem here, and if there isn't, like I said, then that's another discussion.
We have time for one or two more questions if anybody's got one.
Troy, how did you leave things with Gus Malzahn, who apparently he came out today and said he'd been talking to you quite a bit this week? I guess what or in recent days? I guess how did you leave things with him?
You know, with any of the coaches, just is it the only way it gets pushed forward is a rule proposal is if there's something that comes forth, and I probably lean a little bit on the NCAA office here to tell us that if there is if there really is a safety, you can show us something that's firm and clear cut in terms of a safety matter, then I think that's valid. But if there is not, then I don't. Now, no way. That's one opinion, but it has to be something that, again, I sound like a broken record here. It's got to be medical or safety or something that's involved in terms of the health or the well-being of a student athlete.
Troy Erdmas from the Denver Post. There was talk in the NFL, I don't know how extensive, but of eliminating extra point kick. Could anything like that gain any momentum in college football?
Don't know, Irv. The one other thing that could be a possibility down the road that is if there's a blatant hit on a quarterback in a passing position, some guy comes through and he just blatantly hits the guy at the knee or at the shin, then that, do you provide a referee the ability to call, personal foul? And, it's somewhat like when Tom Brady got hurt I guess it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago in the first game. But the difference here is I think in the NFL, there are times maybe where a defender's trying to, work off a blocker and he takes 2 more steps and kind of reaches forward and naturally grabs around the lower half of the quarterback leg. I don't know if that would necessarily be a penalty, but, as you move forward, if you just see an unblocked, probably a blitzer in most cases, just in terms of the way a protection was called. That if you have a linebacker or a defensive back or something like that, and as he comes through and a guy's he's positioned to throw, he's in a set-up mode, that if you go right through a shin, then that's, should that be a 15-yard penalty? Because obviously at that point you got to take a higher target.
Troy, what about the comments from the NFL commissioner about eliminating the extra point kick because it doesn't mean a lot in his estimation? Could that gain any momentum in college football?
I don't know, Irv. I will say this: I don't think more and more rules are the way to go. I think it's a phenomenal game, incredible game. As long as we're pretty proactive, and I think we've been extraordinarily so, especially when it comes to the cervical part, head and neck area. It is a great sport that by and large, I think as advances are made with coaches and the way they teach fundamentals, with medical personnel, and more than anything else, just probably the quality of the athletes, quality of the students, and their dedication. It's a heck of a sport. I do think it moves at a different clip now than we did 15 years ago, and collisions have more impact than they once did. And I do think we're finding out more and more about certain things, at least protocol that does help that involves concussions. I think there's some unique and special aspects that are involved in college football that need to be preserved. And I don't think necessarily more and more rules are. It's just not. I don't know. That's just one generalization. I can't. I won't speak for everybody but all. But I don't think more rules in just to make more rules for the sake of more rules. No, sir.
Anything else for Coach? We got time.
How long are you set to serve on this committee?
Amanda said 2 years ago. Why? It's 1 more year.
Okay. Troy, Brett McMurphy at ESPN. One last question. You talked about the safety elements. Are there any specific safety studies that you are expecting to get back from you? That you're expecting to get in the next 2 weeks, and if so, who is
interesting
conducting
question.
those or presenting those?
Yeah, you know what, Brett? Real good question. Because I talked earlier today. There's a group down at the University of North Carolina that has some background in really, really serious injuries. And then just with the NCAA, just their base office, just trying to say, do we have something that really holds as a pure fact or pure facts with what's relevant here? And it may be to a degree too. There may not be quite enough, large enough samples to know if this really is a concern. Just because it's probably something that's come about mostly when the clock changed. I think this was probably in about 2000. I don't have it in front of me, but about 8 years ago or 9 years ago, the clock changed. The college went and followed the NFL model. Or it used to be a 25-second clock where what would happen was a referee would usually wait about 12 to 15 seconds before they put the ball ready to play. Well, when the college game flipped to the 40-second clock, essentially the referee at that point no longer had to say the ball was ready for play. So as soon as the umpire got it in a position, on the hash or between the hashes, wherever it had to be placed, you could line up and go. And because of it, I think we've all learned that, hey, there are times where we can move at a very, very rapid pace. And I think, what you see is the ball may be snapped as fast as once in a while you'll see a 33, as you watch the clock as it goes down. But there are a bunch that are in the 20s.